Stephanie, welcome. Welcome to Lunch with a Boxer. And today's session, we have Stephanie, who's going to be here to talk a little bit about experiential learning. She might be a familiar face if you attended Senior Preview Scholarship Day. She did present at some of our sessions, so we are so happy to welcome Stephanie back. And just so everybody knows, it's the same as every week. We do ask that your first and last name be listed so we can ensure that if you have any questions that we might need to follow up with afterwards, we are able to follow up with the correct person. Stephanie's going to do a quick presentation, and throughout it, go ahead and answer or ask your questions in the chat box. You can send it so that everybody can read the questions, or if you're feeling a little bit shy, go ahead and send it to me privately, and I'll go ahead and read those questions aloud anonymously at the end of Stephanie's session. And again, this is being recorded, so if you're jotting down notes and you missed something, you can go back to it. We will be posting it on our YouTube channel, so you can listen to it at your leisure. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie.
Hey, Gina, and hello to you all. Thanks so much for being here with us today. As Gina has said, I do sometimes do other admissions events. So if you are seeing me again, I hope I won't repeat myself too much. And I'm very much open to questions and taking this conversation in the direction that you would like to go in. So I have some information to share. I'll give a little spiel at the beginning and then just open it up to hear what you're curious about and what you'd like to know a little bit more about. My role here at Pacific is varied, I would say. I wear a few different hats. And my main title is the Director of Applied and Experiential Learning, and that is going to be the focus of our conversation here today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and somebody will need to tell me if you can't see this because I'm assuming that you can.
Looks great, Stephanie.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Gina. And as part of this, just as a little entryway, Gina said that I have done presentations at the senior preview days. And one of the things that we do in those presentations is we often do a little poll in which we ask students about what they are most excited about at Pacific University. And there's a whole list of maybe 10 or 12, 15 different items, going to study abroad, taking certain kinds of classes, joining clubs and activities. And every single time I have done that presentation, and it's been the same for my partner in crime, Mike Shingle, in advising, who's shared that role with me. Every single time we've done it, the number one thing that our audience has said that they are interested in at Pacific is gaining new skills from experiences. So that's what I'm here to talk with you about today, how that happens, what we do at Pacific, why we do it, and how we would get you involved if you are a student, or if you're a parent or family member, your prospective student involved. And after I go through a bit of an overview here, I'm happy to talk specifics about a particular direction or angle, and you're also welcome to follow up with me separately at a different time if you'd like to. And you can also jump right in at any time if you have questions. I'll ask for questions at the end, but if there's something that I'm talking about, it might make more sense to just talk about it in the moment. So don't feel hesitant to interrupt me. And if you want to do that, please just jump right in and talk over me, because that's how I will know from Zoom that you want to talk while I'm in this presentation mode. So here we have 3 of our students at one of our regular beach cleanups. We partner with an organization called Solve, which is a local organization, but part of an international network of organizations that works to preserve natural environments through cleanup volunteer activities, and they enlist volunteers to do that. You'll see a few different kinds of experiences represented in the images that I have in the slides today. And if there's one in particular that catches your eye, make note and I can come back to it and explain what it is later on. So what we do, in broad brush strokes, we have a civic engagement requirement that is an experiential learning requirement. It's part of our core curriculum. We have programs in civic engagement. We have various opportunities for internships, practica experiences, and field experiences. And we also have outdoor pursuits. Outdoor pursuits doesn't fall under my umbrella, so I'm not going to spend as much time on that today. I'd be happy to try to answer questions about it if you have it, or if you have them. But it is under its own sort of universe, and there's a lot of activity that happens in outdoor pursuits. So what we do, I'll start with the core requirement. And I have here a sample of some of the classes that we have that meet that core requirement. And I want to explain why we have it. This was implemented before I got to Pacific, and this is my 10th year now. So we're going on more than a decade of having this requirement. And the idea is that when students are in college, you know, the faculty will always, at any institution, have some parameters around what that learning experience is going to be like as a general education curriculum. And those are things that we think are really important for our graduates to understand and know and be able to do. And they're informed by what employers say through national research around what employers want. It's informed by educational theory and the idea of having a broad liberal arts education in which there's a little bit of a lot from different areas. And civic engagement is something that is relatively uncommon as a core curricular requirement, but our faculty decided that it would be a good thing at Pacific, in part because we need it as a society. We need people who understand how to get involved and make change together in a civil manner, and how to participate as active and informed community members wherever they are. That's something that has been a part of higher education from the get-go, from the earliest days of colleges in this country. One of the purposes of college is to prepare students for life as citizens, however you define that. And it's not just about getting a good job, although it's certainly a part of that. And even in the good job part, we need people who are employees who are also able to think critically and thoughtfully about important issues of our time. And a really great example of that is currently taking place all across the country, where companies are really under public pressure to take a stance on different kinds of issues. And that means that we don't separate our life as community members from our life as employees. They're really integrated, and we need to learn about all of those things. So this sample of courses represents a list of courses that faculty have decided to embed a civic engagement aspect to it. That means that there's going to be an experiential learning component that oftentimes involves students getting out into the community and off of campus. Not all the time. Sometimes there are experiences that are really project-based and can be done from campus. Excuse me. It means that these courses are all courses that have been vetted by a team of people thinking about whether they have appropriate activities for students, whether they are going to be classes in which the faculty have good partners that they can work with, especially if they're working out in the community and they have a reciprocal relationship with a partner where there's some give and take, and the partners are willing and interested in working with our students to enrich their education. It may mean that there are aspects of this course in which students are going to be engaged in civil conversation and learning how to communicate across differences in some way, shape, or form, and understanding the value and the purpose of being part of a community in that respect. So there are over 50 courses that we have now in our catalog that have a CE, or Civic Engagement, designation. So this is just a handful. We have over 25 different majors and academic programs that have a Civic Engagement course embedded within them. And that means that for students, it's not always, although sometimes it is, sort of an extra thing that they have to take as part of their general ed. Oftentimes, it's just something that's built right into their major or minor, and they might not even realize that they are fulfilling that requirement while they're taking that particular course. And I'll go into at least one of these in a little bit more detail later on, but if something catches your eye and you'd like to know a little bit more about that class later on, let me know. We also have programs that take place outside of classes for students to participate in to deepen their learning with their club, with their athletic team, on their own, with their roommate. And these are programs that we put together in the McCall Center for Civic Engagement. So we have a unit on campus that is devoted to supporting students' civic engagement activities. And we also work a lot with our faculty to help them with those classes that I was talking about. But just an example of some of the kinds of things that we do, we have a team of students that we call the Civic Action Team, and they are responsible for developing and supporting GIVE projects. So these are explicitly designed to get other students involved in civic engagement in some way, shape, or form. Our students who are working in the McCall Center have an opportunity for leadership development to think about what they want to choose to invite other students to participate in. And just yesterday at our staff meeting, we were doing a little brainstorm because we have a new staff member, and he was curious about what our favorite GIVE projects had been. And it was really great to hear from the student staff about some of the variety that they appreciated and were interested in. And they really run the gamut from a student who was trying to support other students de-stressing during a midterm time and put on an like an arts and crafts kind of project where the students could spend some time reflecting and doing art and then use that art to do a good thing. There are outdoorsy kinds of projects where students will get together with our partner Friends of Trees or with Solve, as I mentioned before. There are more advocacy type projects where students will get together on a ballot measure that's being proposed and try to collect signatures for that if it's a cause that they believe in. And to be clear here, the McCall Center's job is not to tell students what to believe or how to act. Our job is to help students do those things in an informed and thoughtful way so that they can pursue whatever their passions and interests are. We're a nonpartisan center and we take that really seriously. So another example of a program that we've had that's sort of on pause right now because of COVID times. But in 2019, we started the Community Conversations program where we have Pacific students sitting down in conversation with community members around a particular topic, like what does it mean to be an American? And we partner with Oregon Humanities, which runs a program called the Conversation Project, and they bring out a trained facilitator who can help our students and community members just talk and think through these kinds of important pressing issues of our time. And for our students, that is also a really memorable experience because they get relatively little opportunity to just interact with members of the general public, especially here in Forest Grove, where they might not be connected through family members and so on. So we're hoping to pick that program right back up again once we're no longer always on Zoom to do these kinds of activities. And then lastly, we also do a bunch of activities that are just based on what's going on in that moment in time. It might be something that's a response to a current event, a tragedy of some sort, or a pressing national issue or a pressing local issue. It might be a speaker or a guest or an event that's happening on campus that has a little bit of a civic engagement spin to it. So we had a national speaker a year or two ago who was speaking on the topic of homelessness and houselessness. And we had civic engagement student staff available at that event to help the audience understand how they could take action on those issues if they were motivated to do so after seeing the lecture that they had just attended. So we try to connect the dots as much as possible with our programs and make them really relevant to the other things that students might be experiencing while they're on campus. And then I skipped over it, I realized, as I'm looking at my monitor over here, Pacific Votes. So we were just recognized as the first voter-friendly campus in the state of Oregon. That's something I'm pretty proud of because we've worked really hard to try to make sure that Pacific students understand how to register to vote and what their rights are as a student, and particularly as a student who may be coming to a different voting district from wherever they started out. They understand how to make informed decisions about the ballot and think through the issues and the candidates that are on the ballot using critical intellectual tools that we teach in college, and not just doing sort of knee-jerk reactions based on TV or something else that they might have seen. That they know how to cast their ballot and what all of those deadlines are. And we've learned over these past few election cycles how important it is to have space to reflect afterwards. In any election, there's always somebody who likes the outcome and somebody who doesn't. And we live in a community where both of those people could be sitting next to each other or sharing a room or something else. And we want to make sure that they have the tools to understand elections in context and as a part of a civil democracy. So all of those things make us really proud to be a voter-friendly campus. And we did that by having a plan that we've stuck pretty closely to increase our voter engagement and education activities around voting and electoral systems on campus. Then in terms of internships, practicum, and field experiences, these are all different words that describe very similar kinds of activities. They might vary in terms of how long they are, whether they are really focused on a particular discipline area or are a little bit broader than that, how the student might earn their credit and what kind of academic class might go along with that experience. I can answer questions about all that, but I'm not going to go into the weeds of those details right now. But I think sort of in broad terms, what might be interesting to know is that they can be done in any year and any term, depending on what the experience is and what the student is ready for and what the community needs at that moment. So practica experiences, practicum, tends to happen at the upper level, usually in senior year. It's usually quite in depth, somewhere between 100 and 400 hours. And it's really a very oriented toward a professional field, such as criminal justice or public health or social work. And we have some programs that require that. Internships tend to be smaller scale. They could be 1 credit or 4 credits, or no credit if that's what the student chooses. They might last for a duration of a semester, sometimes just for a January term in our intensive format, or maybe happen over summer. And internships tend to be a little bit more flexible in terms of when in the student's college experience they take place. And that's something that our advising team can help students figure out when good time would be to take an internship if that's something that they're interested in. We have many different partnership sites for internships throughout the community, and in some cases farther afield. You see the state of Hawaii as an example on this list of internship sites. We have a fantastic community relations coordinator, Vanessa Reyes, who is charged with connecting with employers and helping relay opportunities to students. And I'll touch more on that in a little bit, but she helps us to expand the set of things that we do. And you'll note here that some of these are internal to Pacific. So, for not all students is it convenient to go off campus on a 20-minute bus ride or a hour-long car ride just to have an internship experience. Some can fit that in and others would be really hard-pressed to do that. So we do have fantastic opportunities. We are an employer and an operation with marketing and with accounting and with different offices in which students might be able to do an internship on site and take advantage of the professional staff that we have here at Pacific. Why do we do all this stuff? Well, there's 3 boiled down, super basic reasons, and I'll go into them a little bit more. The learning that we get out of those kinds of experiences, the opportunity for students to make an authentic contribution and apply their learning in some way, and then the sense of community and connection that students get and that we build and are a part of when we participate in those kinds of experiences. So to go into this a little bit further, I think it might be helpful to take a look at one of the classes from the Civic Engagement set of courses. And I picked Civ 240, Food for Thought and Action, for a couple of reasons. I think it's a great example I love this class. I actually developed this class, but have needed to hand it off to other faculty now that I've taken on some different responsibilities. And I just observed the current faculty member teaching this class on Tuesday, so I can speak with some credibility that what I think is happening in this class is actually still happening and is still a really fantastic opportunity for students. So I like to think about 4 different kinds of learning that can come from experiences in civic engagement courses. One is related to the fact that we all know that there are really hard, intractable problems in our society and in our communities. We might debate how we frame and organize those problems, how we think about those problems, but most people can agree that there are problems with hunger, that it is a problem that not everybody graduates from high school and has a good opportunity to get to college. We know that there are problems with affordability of healthcare. We debate what to do about all of those things, but we know that the problems exist, and we need people who can help solve them, who can help work on them. We need generations of people who are able to talk with each other civilly, who are able to think through issues, who can do research and understand good data, who can share and communicate that data or make good arguments about one thing or another, who can weigh out different options and the trade-offs of each. There's all kinds of skills and knowledge that go into helping our communities to be better in whatever way, shape, or form they need to be better. So one of the number 1 goals of civic engagement courses, of course, is civic competence. It's helping students to develop the tools that they need to be effective and active and informed community members. And that includes things like having some basic knowledge of the way systems work in government so that you can make changes, understanding how to engage somebody who has a different opinion and work through a task that you need to do, having a sense of we're all in it together and it's going to take something from everybody. We don't all have to work on every single problem as intensely as every other one, but everybody's got to do something. Everybody has a part to play, and there is a way for everybody to get involved depending on what their interests and passions are. And that's one of the things that I really like to reiterate to students. So much of what we talk about in civic engagement comes from where students' hearts are and what their values are. So we want students to take these classes and come out at the other side a little bit more prepared to address the problems that we have in our society. We know from good research in educational circles that there can be an increased amount of academic learning that can come from learning by doing. And that means connecting those experiences that students are having with their whole body sensory experience. I like that image. I hope you can see it in the middle there of just thinking about somebody holding a little seedling in their hands. And I like to think about that as warm soil, that they're just tenderly holding something to put it into the earth in a food systems class. And in doing that, they're using their whole senses. They are experiencing that soil and that idea of planting something or growing food in an entirely different way than if they are sitting in a classroom or just reading about it in a book. And of course, some students have a lot of experience with that. Maybe they've grown up in farm communities. Other students have not. And one of the things that I love about this particular class is that food is something that everybody can relate to because we all have to eat. And there are so many different dimensions of it. We could talk about students who are increasing their learning of chemistry by talking about the soil composition. Or we could talk about students who are increasing their learning of poverty because they're learning about hunger and food insecurity issues. Or we could talk about students who are increasing their understanding of literature because they are learning about food metaphors that appear in the literature that they are studying. Tons of different angles to approach food systems and learning about food. So another aspect here is personal development and leadership development. I can't tell you how many times I hear from students about something they learned about themselves through the experiences they've been having. It might be, I actually learned I love to garden. It might be, I'm wondering why I eat the food that I eat. Where did that come from? What should I change if I'm thinking about aligning my values with the food systems that I'm a part of? Do I need to change anything? Should I think about being vegan? Is it okay that I love meat? Students have to wrestle with questions that are challenging and exciting to be thinking about in this context where their brains are stimulated in so many different ways. And then the leadership development part of that is also the opportunity to lead among peers, that oftentimes when we are working together to solve community problems, it takes somebody to organize the thinking around a certain issue, or to coordinate a group meeting, or to help other people that are participating understand what's going on and kind of bring them along. There's a lot of leadership skills that can be developed through civic learning, and that's one of the things that we specialize in the McCall Center for our student staff especially, but also that they become empowered to help other students with that as well. And then the last thing I wanted to mention here is the career development edge, and the growth that students can experience around how they think about future work opportunities. It may be that through participating in experiential learning in college, students narrow the field of what they're interested in. That may mean that they catch the fire for something that they're super excited about. It may be that they put out a fire that they thought they were excited about, and then they realize, actually, that's not what I thought it was. And now that I've experienced it, I've learned that that's really not the thing that I'm most interested in. Or maybe they have enough exposure to organizations and other professionals and what their students or other peers are thinking about things, that they are able to have some nuance in their thinking about things. They may have realized, boy, they love talking about food and thinking about food. Turns out they're not so much into farming, but maybe they're starting to think about a farm to table restaurant and opening something up as a business owner. Or maybe their thoughts just go in a slightly different direction that can help narrow a little bit or imagine the possibilities of what could come next. I want to share with you as part of that. Oh, I want to jump ahead here. Sorry. I had an extra slide in there. An image that I just came across the other day, and I'll zoom in on this in just a minute so you can see the details a little bit more closely. But this comes from an article in Inside Higher Ed that was it's a national educational journal, and they were reporting on a study that has just come out about what do employers want, and that's the kind of research that's done on an annual basis to get the pulse of what comes next for college graduates, and whether college is veering off and doing things that are irrelevant for students' future employment, or whether there's some alignment and dovetailing there. And as you can see, I hope that this one's a little bit more clear. Experiential learning is highly valued by employers, and even more so by employers under 40, which I think is interesting. So having a completion of an internship or apprenticeship is actually the #1 thing. It was the highest ranked among these experiences from the employers across all age groups. Another one that ranked pretty high is experience working in community settings with diverse groups of people. And I'll come back to that one in just a minute, so make a note. Down here a little bit further is, if I can find it, completion of a community-based or service learning project, which is right in the ballpark of our civic engagement activities. So there are a lot of different experiences here that we are trying to offer students at Pacific that would have relevance and maybe separate a student looking at a job from other candidates in that search. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on how we can help you get involved. I want to touch on 2 broad areas, and then a little bit on the third there. The 2 broad areas being 2 areas that I oversee, so I can speak most carefully about those. The McCall Center for Civic Engagement, as I mentioned before, is a unit on campus that straddles our curricular and our co-curricular worlds. So we help students with what's going on in class, what's going on outside of class, and how the two are actually connected, and oftentimes they are, to create opportunities for students to get involved. We have students who come to us because they have a requirement in their class and they need help maybe locating a site where they could volunteer or where they could connect with a professional. Perhaps they need a little bit of funding. We have students who maybe want to do a project that needs a little bit of startup of some sort. And then once they get that startup money, they can either generate more money with that money or do something good with it. And an example might be students who need just a little bit of startup money to buy some craft supplies. And with those craft supplies, you're going to make a little doohickey that they can then sell. And as a sale of that item becomes a fundraiser for an organization that they support. We don't want those students to have to lay out their own money for a project in which they are learning how to conduct a fundraiser. There's lots of great skills that can come from that experience. So I wouldn't want to deter somebody from doing that just because they don't have 25 bucks to go down to the store and pick up some supplies. So we provide small scale grants and give students a practice writing a grant, pretty low-key, safe way, and try to support students in figuring out what they want to do and how they can make it happen. As I mentioned, we have a team of students in our McCall Center who are available to help other students on campus. And we have an amazing academic and career advising team that has professional advisors who are also working in the field, trying to dig up internship opportunities, practicum experiences, and several of those staff members who are our advisors also either supervise internships, help students secure internships, or teach classes in which internships or practica experiences are embedded in that class. All this to say, our academic and career advising team is like this with our experiential learning opportunities. They know what's going on. They know how important it is, both in terms of your academic trajectory to take classes that can help further your interests and that fit with experiential learning opportunities, and for the long haul, to think about career exploration in that sense. So we have kind of an integrated system where students can find support for their whole shebang, all within our academic and career advising staff. As I mentioned, we have a career community relations coordinator. Vanessa puts out a job blast every couple of weeks that is not just job opportunities that we've heard from local employers on, but also internships, scholarships, volunteer experiences, and other kinds of unique opportunities that our partners have reached out to us on, and they want us to spread the word. So that's a whole different ballgame from looking at Indeed.com or Craigslist or one of those other really big national or even really big local sites that's designed for job searches. Those are for everybody. But the job blast is for Pacific students. And so it's a way to get some tailored recruitment to help students know, hey, they're looking for people like me, and I might have a shot at this opportunity. So I'm going to put my energy toward these things that I have a shot at. And then we also use Handshake, which is a software tool that students can sign up for, and we use tags and targeted mailings so that students can get updated when there are opportunities that employers post to that digital bulletin board of sorts. And then lastly, we have a work and service fair where we have employers who are coming to campus virtually or in person and are engaging with students in conversation to maybe do some hiring on the spot or collect a bunch of interested candidates that they can follow up with later. And those work and service fairs are good for actual jobs outside of the community, internal jobs that are work study or student employment opportunities on campus, internships, civic engagement. So it's a whole set of partners that we invite to campus on those days. We usually have a couple of them a year, although now that we've done a few virtually, who knows, we might change that format up a little bit. And then lastly, of course, all of our faculty and staff have their own networks. They have their own set of people that they are married to, that their kids go to school with their parents, that they knew from grad school or whatever else. We have faculty and staff who are also connected to employers and to organizations where there might be opportunities for internships or other kinds of experiential learning. And it is often the case that our students will find something that they want to do through the faculty and staff that they're connected to. And that's just about open communication and expressing that you're interested in something, and being open to the suggestions that faculty and staff might have to connect you to something that you could do in the community. So all of that is where I want to leave us off for today, give you a chance to ask any questions that you want to about what else we do, or anything that I can help clarify or dig into a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing for now, but I can go back to something if we need to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie. That was a lot of information, and a lot of great information that I always find I'm always learning about Pacific. So I appreciate that. We did get one question that came in, is you talked about the civic engagement being like it's in specific 25 different majors. If there is one within a major that's, I'm sorry, I can't phrase this. If it's in the, if it doesn't have one in my major, it's a question that I'm
what do I
do? To. Exactly. Thank you.
Yes, I think I understand this question. So yes, I'm happy to clarify that. So for the ones that are within the major, it could be one of two things. It could be that it's a class that's at maybe the 300 or 400 level, that's really just for the students who are in that major. And maybe they need to have some foundation in that subject matter before they can really make an authentic contribution to what else is going on out there. For example, we have a media class called Integrated Media, Project Management for Integrated Media, I think is the full set. And in that class, it's a 300 level class. Students work with a client in the community like Centro Cultural, and they listen to the client, what their digital marketing needs are. So in this case that I'm thinking about, when they partnered with Centro Cultural, they needed new brochures. They needed website motif, sort of the background art that would go with that website. They wanted to have some of that motif carry over into their social media. And they were preparing things like digital newsletters. So the students were able to use graphic design tools and project management skills to prepare several different versions that they then got feedback and input from their clients on, which is how it works in the real world. And then they had to modify it and change it and say, oh yeah, they didn't like this so much, but they really like this part, and come up with a final product that the organization could actually use in the future. 100 level students probably wouldn't have been ready for that. So some of our classes are really advanced level for students in a field, but many other classes are housed within a department. They might have a prefix like philosophy, P-H-I-L, but they are open to students regardless of whether they are a major or not. Maybe they have a prereq, maybe they don't, but anybody can take them. So Philosophy 202, Ethics and Society, is one of our most popular civic engagement classes. There's usually 4 sections a year, and it gets students from all different majors, some of whom are philosophy majors, but many of whom are not. And those classes are just taught in a way that they can be approached from people who don't have that disciplinary background in the subject matter. And then thirdly, we have classes that are civ classes. So the food for thought and action class that I was explaining earlier is a great example of that. All of those civ classes are designed to be interdisciplinary, to be open to students from any major to take, and to do exactly what that question was asking about, to provide opportunities for civic engagement for students who don't have that clear pathway in their major or minor. And of course, there are a good number of students who take more than one civic engagement class because they like it, because they enjoy learning in this way. And even though their major does check that box for them, they want more. So we like to provide a good suite of options for students in that regard.
And that was the next question that came in, is to be more involved with civic engagement. Is there a club that they need to join, or how can they be a little bit more hands-on outside of the requirements?
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple of different ways. Yes, there are several clubs actually that are in this sphere. We don't have a civic engagement club per se, but what we do have are a couple of different service clubs. So some of you might be familiar with Circle K or the Key Club, a version of it in high school, which is affiliated with Kiwanis International. Or Rotaract, which is affiliated with Rotary International. Both of those clubs, and they often work together and often have a lot of overlap in who's involved with them. Both of those clubs will regularly run service projects for their group, and they coordinate with the McCall Center so we can help them with advertising or making sure that when they want to go to the Oregon Food Bank, it's not the same date that we were planning to take a bunch of students to the Oregon Food Bank. And then there's also clubs like College Democrats or Students for Environmental Activism that just take a different spin on civic engagement. And then the other way is that we keep a mailing list, a Google group, in the McCall Center so that we can communicate out to students who said that they're interested in this kind of stuff. Hey, sign up for this GIVE project. We're going to be taking a bunch of students to the Oregon coast on September 21st. If you want to come join us, transportation provided. Click here and register for this event. So we try to make it really easy for students to know what's going on and then sign up to participate in those kinds of activities. And then also, students can get help from the McCall Center if they want to do their own thing. So we've had students who are RAs who've said, I really want a team bonding activity for my floor. Do you have some suggestions, or can you help me figure out how I can work with my students to take them on a service project? And then we work with them to help figure out how you do that. You might need to sign up for a group spot with an organization, or you might need to make special arrangements to be able to do a certain kind of project. We can help you figure out transportation and whether there's any costs involved. We might even be able to help fund some of those costs, or provide snacks or something like that. Sort of, if you want a ready-made experience, you can pop into one of our ready-made experiences, or if you want to make your own, we can help you do that and get connected with the Forest Grove and Washington County communities.
I love that. There's so many different ways to be involved, and so that's definitely a huge, huge plus. When would typically students take a civic engagement course? It kind of sounds like it might be a lot of the freshman student, because I know still trying to transition into college and get used to that. What is the typical timeline for students?
It's interesting because I know a lot of advisors are interested in helping students to make sure that their core requirements are covered, and sometimes will encourage students to take those requirements early on. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but I have certainly had students who have found that when they do something like that early on, they may be duplicating a requirement because they haven't even figured out what major they want yet. So they may end up in a major that requires a civic engagement course, and they need to do another one because their major will cover it, and it might be required in their major. However, I think there's no harm in starting early. We do have a lot of classes that are fine to take in the 100 and 200 levels. And because experiential learning is so valuable in helping students figure out what they want, I think that it's a great way to explore and to think about what's out there in the first couple of years. I do think that it's best to avoid, rather than thinking about it sort of in terms of the overall college experience, there are a couple things that I would think about avoiding. I would avoid trying to take a civic engagement class in your peak athletic season, or when you're going to be involved in a theater performance. Those are intensive activities and they take a lot of time, and civic engagement in theory is something that fits within your course schedule because it's sort of built into our credit system. But I know that when you have to leave campus to do something and you're sort of scheduling it differently from other parts of your day, it just feels like an extra thing. And so for students who are really busy in a particular term, I don't think it's always the best term to do their civic engagement because they might not be able to give it their all the way they would in another semester. Similarly, I would not wait till senior spring. I would like to say that that's never happened. And that's not true. And I would like to say that there has never been a panicked student who has shown up in my office door after realizing that they have a requirement that they didn't realize that they had. That's not the case. Those are no fun conversations to have, right? We don't want anybody's graduation to be delayed because they didn't do a requirement that they were supposed to do. And yes, that's something that we should have caught in advising, and who knows what the particulars were of that situation. But it can be, I think the most beneficial experiential learning is experiential learning that you're excited about. And anytime you narrow your choices to one particular semester or the last semester, your choices are just going to be a little bit more narrowed. And I think the best experiences are the ones where you can find something that you're interested in, because it does take your whole body and your whole effort to be civically engaged. And I think that it's best when students are able to do it at a time when they can devote the energy to it that they want to devote to it.
Awesome. That is so amazing to hear. In terms of requirements, how many core classes are a requirement? I know that might be a little bit difficult with the different majors out there. You can give us a ballpark?
Yeah, so there's a few layers of requirements that are helpful to just kind of keep in mind. And this is nothing that you need to pin down right now, because once you're at Pacific and you're in our advising system, our advisors will take care of you and help you sort all of this out. But there's, on the very, very big level, there are graduation requirements. There are certain things that everybody has to do in terms of overall number of credits, having a major, having done a senior capstone, those kinds of things. Then there are major requirements. So what you have to do to get a major in a certain topic area. And then there's general education requirements. And in addition to civic engagement, we also have requirements for writing, foreign language, math, exploring social context. We have quite a few of those, but civic engagement is one that can double dip. So we have a lot of classes that meet our civic engagement requirement, but also meet social systems requirement, or also meet our sustainability requirement, or also meet our international and diverse perspectives requirement. So it's pretty easy for students to dovetail one requirement with another and be a little bit efficient in that sense. I don't have the exact number of overall curriculum core requirements in my head, but for civic engagement, it's just 2 credits. So it could be a 4-credit class that has a civic engagement component, or a 2-credit class that has a civic engagement component. And students also have the opportunity to do an independent project to fulfill that requirement. And that means that they can, if none of those classes meet your interests, you can still pursue something on your own. An example of that is I worked with a student who was interested in firefighting and fire science. And we don't have a particular class about fire science. That's a very particular niche area, but she was able to get connected with the Forest Grove Fire Department and do an outreach project where she was working on fire prevention with the Forest Grove Fire Department as her civic engagement experience. So you can also think outside the box a little bit. And I love sitting down with students and helping them think about, what they could do to fulfill this requirement if it's not working for them to take a regular class.
Awesome. That's so great to hear. We do have a lot of students who are interested in going into fire science. And so it's nice to be able to know that there are other pathways that students have done previously and have found successful, which means our students that are going to be incoming can also be successful in that. So thank you so much, Stephanie. I don't have any other questions that were coming in. Was there anything else that you wanted to add on? I mean, you've been so thorough. It's so amazing to hear all these opportunities on campus.
I realized that I skipped over something that I did want to mention, and I'm not going to go back in my slide, but I went into more depth with the learning outcomes than I did with the contribution that students are making and with the community connection. And I just want to reiterate those last 2 parts because I think they're super important. Students need to feel like they are doing something that's meaningful, and that this isn't a requirement that's just busy work, that's just people are, making stuff up for them to do to fulfill this requirement. And maybe they'll do a report that sits on a shelf somewhere. That doesn't feel great when you're doing that kind of work. So we work really hard with our partners to make sure that when you're out there in community, the work that you're doing is real. You are actually contributing to alleviating food insecurity in our community, or you are actually helping grow food, or you are actually helping to solve this problem. And the community and connection part is important too. Not only do students have an opportunity to build their own network and meet professionals in the field who then might provide references or be a source of an informational interview to help explore a certain profession, but students are also more connected to each other. And this is something that I can't emphasize enough, the value of working together across differences and within teams and groups. It is a fantastic way to build community on campus. And so it's just fun. And I think that's a good way to close, is to emphasize that for all of the sort of principled, idealistic reasons that we promote civic engagement, in particular for experiential learning, there's also the idea that it's just fun and it's an enjoyable activity for students to participate in. So thank you all very much for your time and attention today. I'm really happy to answer additional questions, offline some other time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And I know with all the students being indoors and just kind of being quarantined, going out there and, being physically in connecting with the community is something that a lot of students are looking forward to. So I can only imagine how exciting this sounds like for them. So thank you so much, everybody, for hopping on to this session. I do want to let you guys know that we do have another Lunch with the Boxer next week, I believe. Can you guys see my screen? Does that look awesome? So next week, we're actually going to have two parents of current students hop in here and have like a little mini panel session where you can ask them questions as a parent of a current student, what they have done to help their student be successful at Pacific, or any tips or advice that they might have for you. So I do recommend hopping in and asking those questions. I also wanted to put in the chat box here our website. And again, you can access this recording. I'll be posting it up today, as well as the recordings from previous sessions. And you can also see there is a Google form to fill out. So if you have any questions that maybe popped up for Stephanie after the session, you can go ahead and enter in those questions there. Or for any future sessions, you can go ahead and stick those questions in the Google form, especially for our families who aren't able to make it to the live sessions. I know we have a larger group who views the videos afterwards. So thank you, everybody, again, so much. Thank you, Stephanie. We appreciate your time. Have a great rest of the day, and we will see you next week for our next Lunch with the Boxer with our current student parent panel. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.